Vanderbilt freshman guard Darius Garland will withdraw from school in order to focus on the 2019 NBA draft. Out for the season since the fifth game of the year, the former five-star prospect had surgery on November 26 to repair the meniscus in his left knee. According to a report from Evan Daniels of 247 Sports, Garland is now done with his college career. Garland will withdraw so that he can turn pro and handle rehabbing and draft prep on his own. In a weak 2019 NBA draft for point guards, Garland has a chance to become a lottery pick if he shows that he's healthy before June. Putting up 16.2 points, 3.2 rebounds and 2.8 assists per game in limited action this season, Garland shot 53% from the floor and 47% from three-point range. With his ability to knock down perimeter shots while also running an offense, the 6'2" Garland could be an attractive prospect for teams looking to upgrade at lead guard. Although Vanderbilt losing Garland was expected since he was potentially a first-round pick, it still stings to only have such a talented, potentially game-changing prospect for a little over 4 games before his college career comes to a close. Rob Doster was joined on Tuesday for the Monday Overreactions podcast by Mark Titus of One Shining Podcast and The Ringer. Indiana native and an Ohio State alum, Titus brought some unique insight into the Big Ten as well as an appreciation for Virginia and the way they play. The two also spent time discussing Titus' scholarship program and whether or not his live pods were any fun. Here is the rundown. Open, Titus launched a scholarship program for walk-ons that's pretty cool. 13-15, Duke beat Virginia, and we need to talk about it. 31-50, what is wrong with Indiana, and can it be fixed? 43-10, fact or fiction, Michigan State is better than Michigan. 50-00, are live pods fun or hard? I can't believe some of the things that came out of my mouth last week. Like, for example, how I said, over and over again, that Trey Jones was the most important player on the Duke roster. Yes, Jones does things that no one else on this Duke team can do. Yes, he is an elite on-ball defender that allows R.J. Barrett to slide into a role that is more suited for him offensively. Yes, he provides leadership and takes pressure off of their half-court offense with the transition opportunities that he creates. All of that is true. But the idea that I said, and actually believed, that anyone other than Zion Williamson, and, to a lesser extent, R.J. Barrett, is the most important player on this Duke team is just laughably absurd. This is how I know I need better friends. Because anyone that truly cared about me as a human being would never, ever, let me say what I said last week with such conviction. If you need me, I'll be taking an L. 2. Grant Williams, Tennessee. I've made this point over and over this season, but it bears repeating after the performance that Dedrick Lawson had on Monday night. We fawn over the Kansas star because of his size, his efficiency, his passing ability and the way he can space the floor with his shot. Here are their numbers, side by side. Should I mention that Tennessee is currently the #1 team in the AP poll as well? 3. Marquette Howard, the best shooter in the country. He the second leading scorer in the high major ranks and the nation's 5th leading scorer overall. There's no high major player in college hoops that has been more efficient with a higher usage rate. All of those things are true and wildly impressive for a player that is 6 months younger than Trae Young, but we also need to consider this: Howard's assist rate is on par with the likes of Ty Jerome, Jarrett Culver and Justin Robinson. He's been unbelievable this year. 4. Darius Lawson, Kansas. It has been a weird 2 games for Lawson. On Saturday, in the loss at West Virginia, Lawson was unable to get a touch in a dangerous spot in the last 2:30 of the game as the Jayhawks stumbled through 4 ugly possessions while blowing a 6-point lead. On Monday, Lawson finished with 29 points and 15 boards on 13 for 17 shooting, coming up with a huge block and an ever bigger 3 in the final minute to help seal the win. He carried Kansas for long stretches early in the game as the rest of Bill Self's roster found a rhythm. He was nothing short of sensational. I'm sure Kansas fans are hoping that, over the course of the final 3 months of the season, we see more of that Lawson and Lasso, the player that couldn't get a big bucket when they needed it in Morgantown. 5. Yao Morant, Murray State. I know it was only Sue Edwardsville, but Yao Morant went for 40 points and 11 assists on Saturday. He was 21 for 21 from the foul line and, in his last 2 games, is now shooting 7 for 14 from 3. He's not a great shooter yet, but he's getting there. Top 5 picks. 6. Jarrett Culver, Texas Tech. After a sterling start to the season, Texas Tech is starting to get figured out. This is what happens when your offense is, essentially, the Jarrett Culver show. He hasn't been good enough to carry the Red Raiders in their last 2 games, a home loss to Iowa State and a loss at Baylor. He was 7 for 21 from the floor against the Cyclones and had 7 turnovers in the loss at Baylor. 7. Our J. Barrett, Duke. We were all up in arms about Barrett's performance in the loss to Syracuse, finishing with just 23 points on 8 for 30 shooting. He turned around and put up 30 points on an efficient 11 for 19 shooting against Virginia, one of the nation's very best defensive units. 8. Cassius Winston, Michigan State. No one in college basketball deserves more and is getting less All-American hype than Michigan State star point guard Cassius Winston. What he is able to do in transition is a difference maker for a team that likes to run far more than anyone realizes. He's been better defensive as well, and in the absence of Josh Langford, he's picked up the scoring slack when needed. He had 29 points and 6 assists at Nebraska. He had 23 points and 5 assists against Purdue. He had 25 points and 5 assists at Ohio State. Sparty won all of those games, and after soundly knocking off Maryland on Monday night, they have now won 11 in a row and sit all alone in first place in the Big Ten. Michigan State is dangerous, and Winston is the reason why. 9. Ethan Happ. Wisconsin. Happ had one of the most dominating performances of the season on Saturday, as he posted 26 points, 10 boards, 7 assists and 2 steals as the Badgers handed Michigan, one of the top 5 defensive teams in the sport, their first loss of the season. Wisconsin has struggled of late, and Happ's inconsistency from the free throw line is going to cost the Badgers a big game at some point, but what he did on Saturday was special. 10. Someone, Virginia or Gonzaga. These two teams play drastically different styles. Gonzaga is one of the fastest teams in the country while Virginia is the slowest team, but the one thing that they have in common is that there is no clear-cut best player on either roster. DeAndre Hunter is the best pro prospect for Virginia, but Ty Jerome might actually be their best player this year while Kyle Guy is the team's leading scorer. We can say the same thing with the Zags, who are infinitely better thanks to the defense that gets played by Brandon Clark but who run their offense through their Japanese star Rui Hachimura. In the mix, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Virginia Tech, Jordan Caroline, Nevada, Carson Edwards, Purdue, Charles Matthews, Michigan, Shomori Pons, St. John's. Kansas earned a huge Big 12 home win on Monday night as the Jayhawks outlasted Iowa State for an 80-76 win. Following a Saturday road loss at West Virginia, there were questions about the Jayhawks' ability to close tight games following some recent late-game mishaps. But thanks to a key defensive adjustment and a strong performance from a Player of the Year candidate, the Jayhawks stayed right in the mix in a crowded Big 12 race. Here are 3 takeaways from the Kansas win on Monday night. Defense was a huge part of the Kansas comeback and eventual win. By switching in the second half, and adjusting to Iowa State's movement-heavy offense, Kansas was able to go on a 14-0 second-half run and take a solid lead in the second half before eventually going on to win. The first half, Kansas looked sluggish on the defensive end, as they couldn't seem to stay with the Cyclone offense. Head coach Bill Self adjusted in the second half by switching at all positions in some smaller lineups. It changed the game for the Jayhawks. gaining confidence by getting stops in the second half. Kansas translated that into offense. That run eventually helped them gain control of the game. Making plays on the defensive end, it also started to get slow, starting guys like Marcus Garrett, 16 points, and LaGerald Vick, 14 points, when they didn't have a lot fall for them early. Kansas didn't have the start they wanted. They looked hungover from the road loss 2 days before. But the halftime adjustments and renewed commitment to the defensive end ignited the Jayhawks on both ends of the floor. A team that has struggled to close some games got some key stops when they needed them. If Kansas can defend like that, and get some timely stops, then they can stay at the top of the Big 12 race. Iowa State remains a dangerous team despite the loss. The Cyclones might have fallen on Monday night. Looking at things long-term, Iowa State held the halftime lead in this game, rallied to tie the game in the second half once they fell behind, and still ended up with a 1-1 season series matchup with Kansas after a blowout win at Hilton. The Cyclones haven't shown nearly enough reliability to be considered a major top 10 team. They also haven't been fully healthy enough to figure things out for this season. All of that being said, the Cyclones still remain one of the nation's most dangerous teams because of their offense. Iowa State's ability to have 4 or 5 guys in every lineup who can score is a huge help. Mariel Shayok, 26 points, Talon Horton-Tucker, 16 points, and Michael Jacobson, 12 points, all made some key shots in this one. And Lyndall Wiggin, 3 points, and the rest of the rotation outside the starting 5 provided next to nothing. If the Cyclones get a night where more than a few guys are clicking, then they could be a terrifying team to face in a tournament-style scenario. Kansas forward Darius Garland closed this game like a Player of the Year candidate on a night where many of their key players struggled. The Jayhawks got a huge, potentially signature, performance from junior forward Darius Garland. Coming up with 29 points and 15 rebounds on 13 for 17 shooting, the forward looked simply unstoppable while displaying ruthless efficiency. But most importantly, Lawson came up with clutch plays on both ends of the floor for a Kansas team that desperately needs help closing. Making a huge block on a Wigginton dunk attempt with under a minute left, Lawson stopped Iowa State from closing the game to within 1 point as the play also ignited the home crowd. Following that, on the offensive end, Lawson's three-pointer with a little under 30 seconds left made it a 5-point game and proved to be a major difference in a tight game. Kansas needed this type of performance from Lawson on a sluggish night, and he delivered in a huge way. While others like Zion Williamson and Grant Williams are ahead of Lawson in the Player of the Year race, if he keeps playing like this, he'll quickly rejoin the top conversation. Monday was a slow night in college basketball. There were 3 games between ranked teams to keep it interesting though. With major battles in the ACC, Big 10 and Big 12, the night started slow, but closed with a good back-and-forth game. Number 9 Kansas outlasts No. 24 Iowa State in back-and-forth contest following a bad loss to West Virginia over the weekend. Kansas took the floor Monday against an Iowa State team that previously blew them out in Ames. The Jayhawks avenged that first Iowa State loss with a solid comeback win in Lawrence against the Cyclones on Monday. Playing very much like a Player of the Year candidate, Jayhawk junior forward Darius Garland had a monster game with 29 points and 15 rebounds, making critical plays on both ends of the floor. Lawson knocked down a key three-pointer to make it a 5-point difference with under a minute left, while also making a huge block of a Lyndall Wigginton dunk attempt that could have pulled Iowa State to within 1. With all of the Kansas woes late in games, this was a solid win for them after Iowa State mounted a late rally to tie the game. First half run propels No. 11 North Carolina past number 10 Virginia Tech. The Monday ACC undercard to Saturday's memorable Duke vs. Virginia clash. The Tar Heels used a huge 20-2 run at the end of the first half and eventually run past the Hokies. getting stops after a hot start for Virginia Tech's offense. The North Carolina defense looked much improved after some bad stretches at times during the season. Freshmen also played a giant part in the win for the Tar Heels, as Kobe White, 27 points, and Nasir Little, 23 points, combined for 50 points, while Luke May, 14 points, and Garrison Brooks, 12 points, had solid games on the interior. Since North Carolina has to play a difficult remaining ACC schedule that includes 2 games against Duke and a tilt with Virginia, this is a critical home win for them to get against a team as good as Virginia Tech. Cassius Winston, number 6 Michigan State control game against No. 13 Maryland in the Big Ten. The Spartans maintained control of the league with a solid double-digit win. The Terps, playing without junior guard Joshua Langford, and with big man Nick Ward, 0 points, struggling for consistent defense, the Spartans still pretty easily took care of the top 15 thanks to defense, toughness and the steady play at point guard of Cassius Winston. Soundly outplaying his counterpart in Maryland's Anthony Cowan Jr., Winston, 14 points, 7 assists, led a balanced effort for Michigan State as 5 double-figure scorers led to a solid offensive night. Kenny Goins, 14 points, 12 rebounds, finished with a double-double for the Spartans, while Xavier Tillman, 10 points, 5 blocks, and Aaron Henry, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, gave great role efforts. The Spartans remain unbeaten through 8 games in a very deep Big Ten, as they're quietly looking like one of the most consistent teams in the country. This team doesn't have a headline-making star like Miles Bridges, but Michigan State is playing together and playing hard on both ends of the floor. Chapel Hill, NC, North Carolina went from being unable to hit a three-pointer to seemingly unable to miss. And its touted freshmen rolled the big nights against a highly ranked Atlantic Coast Conference opponent. This is more what Coach Roy Williams envisioned, or hoped for, anyway, from his 11th-ranked Tar Heels. Freshman Kobe White scored 27 points, while UNC hit a season-high 16 three-pointers to beat No. 10 Virginia Tech 103-82 on Monday night, cracking the 100-point mark for the first time in league play. Fellow rookie Nasir Little added a season-high 23 points for the Tar Heels, 15-4, 5-1 Atlantic Coast Conference, who struggled out of the gate to fall behind by 9 while making just one of their first 12 threes. But it wasn't long before just about everything started falling from behind the arc, an avalanche that sparked a game-turning 20-0 run that pushed UNC to a 45-31 lead by halftime. "I've seen us play like that, but not in enough spurts this year in games," Williams said. It was the Tar Heels' best showing since scoring 103 points in a December home win against No. 4 Gonzaga. There have been clunkers since, though, namely suffering the worst home loss in 16 seasons under their Hall of Fame coach against Louisville on Jan. 12. "I think the key factor for us was we had won 2 games and then played terribly against Louisville," Little said. "And we didn't want that to happen this time. We just wanted to keep going, keep that energy going, keep that win streak going." UNC made 15 of its last 22 three-pointers, shot 54% for the game and led by 27 points. Ahmed Hill scored 20 points for the Hokies, 15-3, 4-2, who made 6 of 7 three-pointers in a fast start only to end the half by going nearly 6 minutes without a basket while dealing with foul trouble. "I thought we tried to manage it the right way," Hokies coach Buzz Williams said of the 20-0 run. "Obviously we didn't get any stops. It was kind of a mix-match group that we were trying to survive with, and offensively we were for sure out of sorts. It kind of compounded on us fairly quick over those last 4 minutes." Big picture Virginia Tech. This was the Hokies' second road game against a ranked opponent in the past week. Things went poorly in the first at number 3 Virginia, with the Hokies struggling at both ends in a woeful first half en route to a 22-point loss. Williams sounded happier with his team's response this time around. "I think collectively we feel different tonight in the locker room than we did after the Virginia loss," he said, adding, "The scores are similar but I think the energy and the effort in the fight tonight was different." UNC, the Tar Heels, were coming off a win at Miami that pushed them to 3-0 on the road in ACC play, then shook off that slow start by putting 5 players in double figures, even with season-leading scorer Cameron Johnson managing just 8 points. "It just shows how deep our team is," White said. "Our depth is crazy." White leads the way. White finished with 7 rebounds, 6 assists and 4 steals to go with his game-high 27 points, becoming the first Tar Heel to lead his team in all 4 categories since Joseph Forte had 24 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists and 3 steals in a February 2001 win at Duke. From deep, UNC's 16 three-pointers are tied for the number 2 total in program history, one shy of the program record set in 1995. Foul trouble. The fouls added up in the first half for the Hokies. First, starting point guard Justin Robinson headed to the bench with his 3rd foul on a charge at the 9:52 mark, then season-leading scorer Nickeil Alexander-Walker picked up his 3rd with 1:26 left in the first half. Injury news. Hokies reserve P.J. Horn, 4.8 points, didn't play, with Buzz Williams saying he would be out indefinitely due to an undisclosed injury. Up next, Virginia Tech. The Hokies host Syracuse on Saturday night. UNC, the Tar Heels visit Georgia Tech on Jan. 29. This story has been corrected to show UNC's game at Georgia Tech is January 29, not Saturday. More AP College Basketball. http://appnews.com/collegebasketball and http://www.twitter.com/app-top25.